Alright, so the small phone category has recently been pronounced dead. There really isn't much of a market for it anymore. Companies are shifting away into a more feature-packed, more spec-packed phone, sometimes even larger phones, because the small phones are no longer something that's popular. And recently, with the release of the Pixel 8a, a lot of the sentiment has been you might as well go for the regular Pixel 8, especially because a couple of weeks before the launch of the 8a, the regular Pixel 8 was down to $550 for a brand new phone, which is the same exact price, $50 more, but the same exact price basically as the Pixel 8a. And for a phone that has a bit more features, the $50 is definitely worth it. And that got me thinking, are the A series mid-range phones the next phone category to die off? And for all intents and purposes, the mid-range price for me is going to be right around $500, plus or minus $50. But I feel like that comes in right at 50% of what most of these Pro or Ultra models are launching at. So that's the price range I'm going to look at. And specifically right now, I'm going to be talking about the Google Pixel 8a, the Samsung Galaxy FE series, and the iPhone SE 3rd generation, which is currently the introduction or the lowest tier that Apple offers, that comes in right at $450. And initially, to take a look at the design of these phones, a lot of these designs are going to be possibly a little outdated, possibly a little bit less quality than you would see on some of the flagship phones. For example, looking at the iPhone SE 3rd generation, that one is definitely one of the older designs in this whole category, because Apple is still selling a design from a few years ago from the iPhone 8 or the iPhone 6. It still has that typical screen in the front with a Touch ID. And then the Pixel 8 as well has a very similar design to the regular Pixel 8, except the front of the screen is going to be a little bit smaller. That's mainly going to be due to the bezels. So if you're coming from a flagship phone, you're definitely going to notice the bezels, or if you're pairing it next to a flagship phone, kind of comparing it, those will definitely be noticeable, but in the overall day-to-day experience, you barely can notice them. But when it comes to the overall design, like I said, they're very similar to their flagship counterparts. And for the iPhone category, if you're not looking at the SE 3rd generation, you can look at the next tier up, which comes in at $600, right outside of that range of the mid-range. But you can look at the iPhone 13, which has a similar design to the new one. But overall, all these phones will have a full screen up front, a camera cutout of some sort, and then in the back, it'll just be a full back with some of their cameras. And then the other part of the design of the phone is going to be the type of materials they use. And obviously, if they're charging less for the phone, they'll likely use less quality materials. And for a lot of these phones, they decide to go with something like a plastic back rather than glass, which I personally don't really find as a negative or a deal breaker, especially for someone that drops a phone or you use it naked. If you drop a phone and it has glass, glass will most likely break. But if it's a plastic back, there's less of an opportunity for break, or I guess more of an opportunity for it to just get scuffed or scratched rather than cracking the whole back. And personally for me, this Pixel 8a with the plastic back does allow me to use my O-Snap accessory so that I can use that with this phone and add MagSafe capability, as well as some magnets for me to mount the phone to anything that's magnetic. But something else from the design that actually can be a deal breaker for some people is that depending on the mid-range phone that you go with, sometimes they don't come with a good IP rating. Now, IP rating is what makes it dust and water resistant. And if you're someone that commutes, say either on a bike or a motorcycle or anywhere where the phone is actually outside of a covered space, having a phone that has an IP rating to be waterproof is a great option to have. Some of these A series phones do miss out on that, meaning that if you do take it in the shower, you use it while washing dishes, or you just use it right outside of a pool, there is a higher probability for the mid-range phone to get some water damage and stop working. And then you also get other differences when it comes to the display. Sometimes you get a locked refresh rate at 60 Hertz. You can also get less brightness. And at the same time, you can sometimes get a less quality screen, sometimes locked to 1080 or locked to 1440 instead of being a 4K or higher pixel density. And a lot of these are rarely deal breakers because sometimes you can barely even notice it. The 60 Hertz can bother some people, but I think the one that's going to bother the most is actually going to be the brightness, especially if you're someone that works outdoors. Having a very bright screen that you can see within the sun, especially here in Arizona where it gets really bright, having that brighter screen actually helps you be able to see the device better outdoors. And again, if you look at all of these differences, one single feature might not be a deal breaker, but when you start combining everything all at once, I can start to see why someone might be going away from the A series and instead going for the flagship phones, even if they do have to get it on a payment. And not only with these design features are they different, but a lot of the times you do also lose some value in terms of the cameras. Now, if you're not a power user of the phone camera, there might not be that much of a difference from the A series to a flagship phone, but what you do lose out on is sometimes that extra camera and all of those pro features. For example, if you were to look at the Samsung lineup, that 100x zoom camera is only available in their Ultra series. If you were looking at the iPhone set of features, you only get that ProRes capability on the Pro version of the phones. And if you look at the Google Pixel, you only get that extra camera on the Pixel 8 Pro. Now again, for the majority of users, if you're just going out doing some point and shoot camera, whether it's for your family or you're just taking of a beautiful scenery, it's not really going to be too detrimental to not have that extra camera, because that extra camera is made only for one specific thing, but overall the cameras are relatively the same. Luckily though, one feature that usually does carry well to the A series phones is having that low light capability for all of the photos. Again, there will be some phones that actually struggle, but luckily with the Pixel 8a, it doesn't struggle at all with low light photography. That's something that's going to be more software based. And then another thing that actually changes on the mid-range phones is actually the battery. And for this, sometimes it kind of makes sense. You got to think, if you're lowering the features and you have a smaller case design, then you have to put in a smaller battery. But with optimization being fully there, then you should technically get the same battery life as a larger phone. But unfortunately, you do lose other battery capabilities when you go for a mid-series phone. For example, you can't really get fast charging. A lot of the phones do miss out on that, meaning with a smaller battery, if you are a power user and you're using your A series phone like you would a Pro phone, if you're running out of battery midday, you won't be able to fast charge it up to say 50% to get you through the rest of the day. And then other mid-range phones actually don't even have wireless charging capabilities. The Pixel 8a can wirelessly charge, it just can't charge as fast, even wirelessly, as some of the other phones. And then there's another feature that comes with some of the newer phones, which I actually have never used, but it's the reverse charging that definitely doesn't come with mid-range phones, meaning whenever your headphones are out of battery, if you need battery in a pinch, you can just attach them to the back of your phone and they would kind of charge the headphones up, even if it's for 5 minutes. Now, I personally have never used this feature, but for someone that does need battery in a pinch for the headphones, I think this is a great feature to have for those of you guys that are power users and like to use this feature. And unfortunately, mid-range phones just don't have that, which again, that's to me another feature that actually makes sense. If you have a battery that has less capacity, why would you allow someone to charge another device with that small battery already? So that there to me does make sense. And then there are also other features that aren't as important, or I wouldn't count as important as kind of the main, having a good screen and having a great camera, which is no HDR support. Sometimes that's missing on mid-range phones. You also sometimes don't get the Face ID or the newest unlocking system like fingerprint under the screen. Sometimes they move it to the power sensor. The iPhone SE has Touch ID. Again, that still works really great. It's still just as secure, so I don't think it's really a deal breaker. Sometimes you also lose on an SD storage slot, so if you are someone that likes to expand the phone storage, a lot of mid-range phones lose out on that. But again, that's not isolated to mid-range. A lot of the flagships now don't even allow you to expand your storage anyways. And then the last one is 5G. Personally, I do use 5G, but I feel like it's still not up to the point where everyone can use 5G. So having a phone that's still kind of on the previous iteration isn't necessarily a bad thing. 5G sometimes can also just use up all of the battery within the phone. So again, correlating with that, if you have a smaller battery capacity and now you don't have 5G where it's constantly searching, it could actually mean that the phone battery lasts you all day. As someone that's not necessarily a power user, I use my phone anywhere from 2 to 3 hours a day, and that's mainly to be watching content on YouTube, scrolling through Reddit, answering emails, taking calls. So I'm not really necessarily a power user. And with the Pixel 8a, I'm still finishing the day with anywhere between 40 to 50% battery life. So I don't necessarily think it's really that bad with the battery capacity not being as large as some of these other phones. So in the end, even though these phones do still offer a lot of features, I feel like because they are the A series phone and they don't have the full brightness, they don't have the best of the cameras, they don't have a large screen, they always only come in one size, I feel like these are going to be the next category of phones to die off, just like the mini phones. But what do you guys think? Let me know down in the comments. Do you guys think the mid-range phones are going to survive a few years more? Let me know down there in the comments. As always, thank you guys for watching. Click here to watch another one of my videos, and I will catch you guys in the next one.